when we observe children's behaviors, or as a classroom teacher, you face, children's behaviors, and mostly you look at the behavior and you already just know what the behavior is. So we say mostly children's behaviors, we have 5 categories. So most frequently displayed behavior is a disruptive, distractible, and interruptive behaviors. So these behaviors is like children shout out, make a sound, throw things, and talk out of turn, and or just talking to the neighbor. And it is really disruptive while you are teaching, especially you try to explain something new concept, and then students are not attentive, and then there are some students to make a joke or clowning, and they just giggle and laugh, and then it really annoys you and frustrates you as a teacher. So it is very difficult. However, children's disruptive, distractible, interruptible behavior is the most frequently displayed behaviors, and then most of classroom teachers really have a difficult time with these behaviors. And then these disruptive and distractible, interruptible behavior is the child disrupt the whole classroom in the learning environment, right? So they just distract the teacher's teaching and all the children's learning. However, passive off-task behavior is a child display and then only themselves. They impact their learning, even though they are just kind of making some little sounds by crawling, and just make a little bit tapping, playing with the little items. So it could disrupt the neighbors. However, it's not just like a disrupt sustainably, just persistently. Most of the children just look at and then they just come back to the teacher. So it's not that big deal, but however, the child displaying that behavior, their learning is really interrupted. So I named it as passive off-task. And then non-compliance and defiance. So non-compliance may not be that, aggressive. However, defiance could be really just like a aggressive way, and it's a little bit tougher behavior. So non-compliance is just like, they don't move. Teacher gave directions, they don't move. However, defiance is like a talking back, and then just like saying something, and then who cares? Just, I don't want to do this. And that is a defiance. And then aggressive and violent behavior is this aggressive and violence is, when teacher did something and then managed something, and then they could show that behavior, and then they could do to other peers. So that's a bullying and really physical bullying and touching and hitting and shouting and cursing, and all just, included in this behavior. And then this aggressive and violent behavior is like a force of frequently displayed behavior. So it's not that many. However, that, intensity magnitude is really huge. And then atypical behavior is based on the social and then cultural standard. So anything students do, it's like, that's odd, bizarre, and those behaviors that their peers feel. And it could be just many behaviors displayed by children with disabilities, and those behavior itself is atypical. So it's based on our culture, and then they make just like a weird sound, and especially just like ASD children's, giggling and steaming and scripting, those behaviors. So it's not really like a real behavior. However, they display it, interrupt the class as well, and then all the children just look at them just like, a little bit just differently. So these are all about the behavior. The teachers know about these behaviors, and then, I just categorized. However, the inside each categories has tons of different form of behaviors. So we just see any behaviors. If we do the big two and the externalizing behavior, internalizing behavior, right? I didn't include the internalizing behavior here. So externalizing behavior is anything you can see and you can measure and you can assess. And the internalizing behavior is like a different category behavior. It's very quiet, shy, withdrawal, tense, anxiety, and those kind of a behavior is internalizing behavior. So they don't bother others. However, themselves it's more difficult. Right? So that's why we call it internalizing behavior. So that is based on the behaviors, form, and just, types and patterns and quantity and quality, and then we do this behavior. So these are most interested, and then people, just teachers and parents, attentive on these behaviors. However, behavior management wide, behavior shaping wide, we have to know where these behaviors come, because behavior is communication. So what children, try to communicate, and before, why children, through their behaviors, we could interpret those behavior. Before, this is disruptive behavior, passive behavior, non-compliant. We know these behavior, what form of behavior, pattern of behaviors. However, aggressive behavior doesn't tell much. The child is just a little bit dangerous and harmful, right? They can harm other children and harm themselves. So it's all about the just behaviors. However, the other one is a behavior as a communication. We see these behavior, we gotta know what precursors, not only antecedent. Okay, so not just what happened right before. That's environmental things. However, precursors, it could be more chronic and very just like long built chronic precursors. So first one, if a child has any disabilities, it could have some, precursors, right? The child has a social deficit, deficiencies, emotional deficiencies, and child has a maturity deficiencies, and then child has intellectual deficiencies. And sometimes the child, like I had one child like that, and his IQ was like around the moderate level. Every time, he just passed the hallway, and then they just feel his voice was very husky and loud, and then he just say something, and then every just classroom in the hallway they could hear. And then he just like F word, it's just all those kind of, words. I don't know, where he learned with, his IQ big. I even could not have just him. We remember he's just, any letter names and however, object names. However, he remembered all series of those bad words. And then he just shout out, whenever he passed in the hallway, and then in the, breakfast room, and he just throw food and throw just milk. He doesn't matter, it's teachers and children. So we see his IQ is like intellectual level is kind of low. And then he only see how other people responded to him. And they just, the person got those milk and then saw it like a surprise, like a shocked and screamed. However, others, people just around, the children around, they just giggle and laugh. So he sees his peers giggle and laugh every time he believes he did something good. And then he repeats those behaviors. That is a cognitive deficit, precursors and intelligence, impacted those behaviors. It doesn't mean because of he has a cognitive deficit, he shows those behaviors. However, those behaviors continues because intellectually he does not understand those social, atmosphere, what other people think about him. And then he believes other children, those, ridicule laughing, he believes that is really they like him and then they laugh and then what he did is the right things, right? So those are the precursors. And then social emotional cognition is really important. Like before, it's like atypical behaviors. And then many, ASD children children with ASD shows those oversensitivity, and then they scream, yell, just like, or just compulsive behaviors, right? Especially they have obsessive interest is very just looked at by other children, and they see, and then many times it's annoy people and frustrate people around, and those behaviors is just like, and then culture-based behavior is always, culture is very important, how we understand. And then maturity, cognitive maturity and self-control, and those are very important precursors for their behaviors. And then emotional difficulties is very important, right? And even though, internalizing behavior has a lot of emotional, mind and mental precursors, however, those emotional difficulties impact their behaviors. And then academic deficiency is the most biggest one for school children. It doesn't matter whatever disabilities the child have or weakness they have. Most, just like almost 80–90% of school life for 7 hours, children work on academics and teachers are teaching academics. That is a major, their jobs, so what they do in schools. So children do not have their grade level academic skills, and then it's very hard for them to spend the time. Those 7 hours is a long time, and they go to lunch and recess and transition time, and then extracurricular, we all remove those, and then still about 4–5 hours they stay in the classroom with their teacher, right? So those are time, and then they do just all those academic subject areas. So reading and spelling, writing, comprehension, and then just those math, and then social studies and science, and they do all those subject areas. If children, especially they don't have reading skill, so they cannot follow any instructions. Reading skills and writing skills. Reading, writing, and comprehension, those ELA skills, literacy skill is really, really definite skills children need. So you see most of children, whenever I have a time, and I'm gonna go by just, each behaviors my student observed in the classroom, and then I will talk about it. And then I just what teachers can do it. However, just I see even reading those, my students, data collected the data. I just reading, describing about the behavior, just I sometimes have tears in my eyes. Because those little children, 1-digit age, is sitting in the classroom, could not follow teachers' teaching, and how they can kill those long hours. It is very difficult, when we have even, professor just teaching for talking over an hour, it really, you already just lose your attention. So it is very difficult, especially child that doesn't have writing skills and drawing skills. And it's really critical. And then teacher just read the books and talking. However, child does not have a receptive language skill. It's really, really difficult. So it's a lot of, attention is a selective attention and sustained attention. That is the number one. And then sensitivity, just listening, holding their mental capacity to listen to follow the teacher is very difficult. And then visual perception, they don't have. It's very hard to read and recognize things. So, and then those languages, especially receptive language, auditory perception is really critical. So those are all, precursors. And then most importantly, environmental factors. That is a very important part. All others, other factors like a cognitive part, the social emotional part, and maturity and academic deficiencies, all in children. And then environmental factors, it's like a teachers and parents, and then learning environment, how a teacher runs those classrooms. And then teacher has very good management skills, and then student management skills, and a very proactive teacher, and then practice always proximity control. And then they have a good time there. And then children just supposed to what they do, because the teacher knows who's delayed in academics. And always the teacher is proximity control. They just stay with them and then constantly just watch them and they give out work, and their eyes are with those children and just stay with them and then teach them. And then most of the classroom is very peaceful, and then children can focus on what they are supposed to focus on, and teachers could do their jobs and children can do their jobs. However, approximately we have those teachers with good student management and classroom management, maybe about 10 to 20%. When I taught in my school buildings, I saw only one teacher had those. So they're very difficult. It's a human management, and those teachers need a higher order thinking to do all these management and proactively move ahead and prevent. So mostly I said, these behavior precursors. So again, we have too big, just only behavior wide. We could categorize those behaviors based on the topography. However, the other one is precursors. So this is about the shaping. Because let's say child shows all those throwing and shouting and just disruptive behaviors because of their academic issues. And then it does not matter how great token economy you use, and the greatest exchangeable, reinforcement you provide, still child, it is all temporary, short term. Because until this child has instructional level academic skills, until they have that, it is very, very difficult. So we have to, see these precursors are for the permanent long-term effect. So before we touch the behavior, working on the behaviors, we must, master these precursors. So make students very competent learners, and then they can focus and follow teachers' teaching. It is most important. So we have, I just talked about this, behaviors based on the behavior itself. And then there just how these behavior forms are, and then quantity and quality. That is just number of happenings, and then how difficult they have, light, mild. And then the other one is all those precursors. So teacher needs this ability, not just like behavior forms and those, what kind of behaviors they display, why they display these behaviors. That is what teacher needs to figure out. Child throw things whenever child does not have things to do. And then teacher said, I'm gonna place a child at the back corner. So when he throw things, and then he's not gonna disrupt the class that much. And then I'm gonna just make something behind. So whenever he wants to throw, I'm gonna just let him throw to the basket instead of to other people. This is not the behavior shaping, because the throwing behavior is there. So teacher number one have to think of why the child is throwing. Why instead of listening to me or working on the work, child throws. And then number two, if I place child in the back corner, it will stop him throwing. No, right? You just think about other children. You just agree the child throwing behavior as a permanent fact, and you cannot touch it. And then you work on this. Or some teacher said, oh, I'm going to talk to him, and then I'm going to throwing is how throwing is bad, and it can hurt you, it can hurt other people, and they can disrupt. And then they just rationalize reasoning why throwing behavior is bad, and then that is a behavior management. No, it does not work, right? Child knows that his drawing can hurt other people. It's not child intentionally drawing, and some kids could do that, but most of the children just draw to show how they are bored or how they are upset and mad. That's just a they draw. So we gotta work on this drawing and find why he draws things, why he every time he gets mad and then he throws, right? Why every time he gets mad he rips the paper and books. Whenever he sees a book, why he just rip it, tear it. So we have to find why instead of participating in class, they are involving those behaviors. And many times teachers believe they are enjoying those behaviors. No, they want to work. They want to participate in what teacher is teaching. However, they don't know how. They never even saw good behavior. It's just only just to the child point of view, and then just the adults are just nagging him and always tell him what he is bad and not doing well, and there is nothing, just nobody taught him how to participate. Nobody taught him how to stop drawing instead of drawing and do something else, better one. Nobody taught him, and he could do it and then shape it as a habit. So right now the child has a drawing habits, how we can alternate, replace those drawing behavior to the better ones. So many times we could just change children's functions to skills, functions to skills. So those behavior shaping, part we have to think. Okay, so today I'm just didn't plan to just talk about the, how to shape behaviors. However, I just, said, all behaviors, so we go by behavior themselves. So, and then how we can categorize it based on the severity, intensity, and then how this behavior impact, that is a consequence, right? So child throw, display this behavior, and then he could just disrupt the whole class. He disrupted his own learning, right? And it can hurt the other student, it can hurt him. So it's just like the behavior itself, and then aftermath, after that behavior happens, what happened. And then this precursor is the before, just those are stems, roots of why child has those behaviors. Behavior is we can see it, however those roots and stems may be invisible, because cognitive deficit, we don't see it until we test them, right? Emotional difficulties, we don't see it until the child shows it, and showing is a behaviors, because emotional difficulty is invisible until the child shows it. So some children just put it inside and then just become kind of, try to be invisible. However, most children just show it. And then this showing is just a behavior itself. We say just we see the defiance behavior, and then we just know defiance behavior is not that great behavior, bad behavior. However, why child show this defiance behavior? We gotta find that. Right, mostly just like a last trust in adults, and then from the home environment or the school environment, and then mostly children just lose their interest or trust in adults, and then they show those kind of a behavior, and then why they lost trust in children, in adults, and then we have to track down those reasons, and then we can rebuild those trust. Right? Until you build those trust, the child will keep showing disrespectful behaviors because they don't trust adults. All adults to them is like enemies. It just bothers them, annoying them. Always adults saying, it's like no adults say good things about me. So they got used to those. So we have to gradually earn their trust. So how can we earn their trust? Once they like the teacher and trust the teacher, and then they will listen to the teacher, right? And then teacher can work with the child. So we have to see those, deep down those matters. Okay, I'm gonna start here today.